Hello, everyone. My name's Cash Miller. I'm the host of Emerging Brands, Franchises on the Rise. I'm also the CEO of Titan Media Works. We do podcast production. Today, we're going to be talking childcare. It's really important in this country. There's not enough of it. Parents have struggled for years, to find adequate help, to help. Like they got jobs, they've got to raise their kids. So often we need some place to send them. And so I've got a franchise for you that does just that. It's Ivy Kids. I've got with me Dick Wren and their CEO, Amin Bandali. It's great to have you both on. Let's start there and let's talk the franchise itself. Give us the backstory. Because I know this is family owned. How did you get this thing going?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Cash. So a little bit about Ivy Kids and how we got started. So Ivy Kids was founded by my parents, Al and Layla, and they were looking for the same thing a lot of families are looking for today, which is high quality childcare. We moved to Pearland, which is a suburb of Houston in the 90s, and that area was growing, but it didn't have great childcare options. So my brother and I, we would come back from, the mom and pop daycare, and we'd show up with bumps and bruises and, and we would just be sitting around and, there wouldn't be much learning. It would be traditional daycare, right? Where it was just being, watched. So, my parents thought, hey, there's a potential to have a high quality learning environment with a safe, supportive, group of teachers and procedures. So they took that time. It was probably a period of 10, 15 years where they really did their research. And that allowed them to open our first Ivy Kids in 2005. By then, my brother and I were a bit older, so we couldn't attend. We had a chance to, assemble the furniture, work in the after school as teachers and all that fun stuff. But, that being part of a family business, starting that early and having that tremendous success allowed us to have the confidence to then open a second and third location. And then by 2015, when we were at 5 of our own corporate locations, we decided to franchise our brand. That, hey, our system and childcare works really well when there's an active owner, there's someone that the parent knows that they can engage with, there's someone that the teachers, they feel like, hey, there's someone that's invested in this business. And we thought that was a great model for expansion. And that's kind of where we are today with, we still have those 5 locations and we're now growing on the franchise side.
Why did you, decide to get into franchising? Because that's, you had 5, corporate locations already. So why the pivot and, to be able to grow that way?
I think a couple of reasons. I think one is we found that having that personal touch with the families really resonates. And when you keep growing corporate locations, you lose a little bit of that. Even though you have the best intentions, being on site as an owner, that parent knowing, hey, there's someone there that has skin in the game, that there's someone that has a real investment, that knows the child, that knows what's going on in the classrooms. We felt that that was very important, and we did not want to lose that aspect while growing. And 2, I think there's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there. There's folks that want to open a high quality learning environment, that want to have a positive impact on their community, right? So for us, being able to mesh our system and our current success with great operators, we felt like was a great way for us to grow, to help others realize their business dreams, and to provide high quality childcare in their local communities. So I think that was just a win-win-win, which led us to following franchising.
Okay. So what's the opportunity here? Because I know, like I say, the discussion is really centered, around for this entire country, politically, economically, the last few years around the lack actually of, early child care, because it's also, and the expense, it's gotten, it's not cheap to put people, put kids in these kinds of facilities and stuff. But, so what does it look like on that front from a business standpoint? What is this opportunity? Because like you say, you've got about, like 10 franchises, how much growth is there? Because I know with franchise, potential franchisees also like the opportunity to potentially, like, they want to own multiple units over time if given that chance. So they're looking for those kinds of opportunities. So from your standpoint, what's the business look like?
Yeah. So I think thinking about it from the industry first, right? I think the idea of the demand for childcare, that definitely resonated with parents for a long time. And I think it resonated with the general population for most Americans during COVID, right? I think the phrase childcare desert came into the forefront of most people during COVID, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that people could not go back to work without putting their children in childcare, right? And with us, we were an essential service. We had to keep our locations open. We never closed down a location, right? So as other businesses were considered non-essential, we were one of the first ones on that front line taking on families, right? So I think that being in the forefront, are the millennial generation having children. The industry is very bright, right? There's a huge demand for childcare. And, you're seeing an uptick in more private locations, but there needs to be more in order to meet the this generation that are having young children. And you are right. Like, it is very expensive for high quality childcare. And I think you're seeing government step up in a positive way to help with this too. Everything from the American Families Act to the COVID relief bills that were passed during this time, they were meant to subsidize existing childcare providers and to incentivize owners to open more locations. And this has been a connection with the federal and the state governments in order to create these subsidy programs to provide assistance to these families.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest, challenges as a country we face, because there isn't enough childcare, out there, and it's really a challenge for families to deal with that. And then on top of it, it's not, because often you think of like daycare. So, because I want to get into how you handle the children themselves, what they're doing, because a lot of times, it's like drop it off daycare. It's almost like, it's a spot that they're going to be entertained for a while because you got to go to work, but are they really learning? Are they really getting, because the earlier we start teaching, the better. And our school systems aren't necessarily, once they get there, you want to try to give them a leg up as much as possible, because our school systems in a lot of ways are failing. They're not really, doing a great job. Especially when you have a lot of children that might have some sort of learning disability and things like that, and the earlier you identify. So what does it look like when a parent drops off that child? What's their day look like?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we have a wide variety of parents. We have parents that look at 20 locations before they pick an Ivy Kids, and they read every single review, and they interview other parents, they interview their neighbors, and we have some that look for the most convenient location, right? So we want to provide that same service for all of these parents, right? And I think one of the first ones, right? You talk about young children. How do you, what are you doing throughout the day? And really the most important component of that is safety and security, And what you'll see is there's different regulations for each state. Those regulations will tell you a little bit about what is safety, but they don't tell you how to provide a safe school. Okay. They say you need to provide supervision, but they don't tell you what's the process for supervision. And that's really the importance of being in franchising and being a part of a system like Ivy Kids, is we have procedures that take care of very key safety components within the school, everywhere from supervision to playground maintenance to food to allergies. All of these things need to be looked at and be in the forefront. Okay. The second thing is transparency as well. So our parents, they actually get camera access into their child's classroom. They can see exactly what's going on from when they drop off their child to when they pick up their child. Okay. They also get pictures throughout the day, and they can see what curriculum is being learned. They can see how much their child has eaten, how long they've slept. Parents today, they want to be connected with their children throughout, right? They want to understand what their children are doing and what they're learning. So with that, it not only comes with transparency throughout within the day, but also with assessments, things like ages and stages questionnaires that they can then give to their pediatrician to see if their child has developmental delays, right? all of these things, I think we've tried to be on the forefront of the last 20 years, and we continue on expanding these differentiators too for the families of tomorrow.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it's because the more you help, you're right about the parents really wanting to be involved, seeing what they're doing. There's always a sense of separation anxiety, especially, for young, not for the child. The child's great. It's the parent that's the problem. So, I remember when my son was, I don't know, he was probably 3 years old or something, and we had him in preschool, and it was like the first day he dropped him off, mom's in, a nervous wreck, and he runs off and he's like, starts playing immediately. He didn't care, so, so that's not the problem. It's always the parents. So them being able to see, and that's the great, thing about modern technology, is that they can, and then identifying, issues that they might have, helping parents, because a lot of times the parents can't see that, like they say they're dropping them off. Someone else is spending time with them. Someone else is teaching them. So the more the help they have, the better it's going to be. Let's talk about, what it looks like to, because your stores are standalone, ground up builds. These are, it's significant investment. So what does it take to get, an Ivy Kids franchise, one of these locations up and running? What kind of investment? How long does it take? It's a significant thing you're working on.
It is. I'll take that if you want. But hey, thanks for having us on, Cash. We appreciate that. It is a significant investment, but we do have multiple ways to get into the business model. We do have two different prototypes. We have a 10,000 square foot facility and a 15,000 square foot facility. And then the franchise owner has the opportunity to decide whether they would like to buy the land, build the building, and then operate the business on their own. Or we have a lease option where we will help find a developer that will buy that land, build the building, and then lease it back to the franchisee who then owns the business. Startup costs for the smaller one's going to run somewhere between about $4.7 million and $5.7 million. And then on the larger facility, somewhere between about 6.8 and 9.4 million. So a very substantial investment. But you do have real estate and you have the equity of the building that you own. And so what we're seeing currently is we're seeing a mix of new franchisees that are coming into the system that are looking at both options right now. And we're going to work with them to help them fit their needs more than fitting our needs, quite frankly.
Okay. So yeah, it is quite the investment. So when you're building out these facilities, can you describe a little bit what the inside looks like, like what's going into it? Because I know that you're going to have areas, separated classrooms, kind of describe the physical facility itself.
Sure. I'll let Amin take that. One thing I didn't mention, though, on that lease part of it was the startup costs for a lease run somewhere between about $687,000 and $1.2 million. So now you're back into a more reasonable type of investment, particularly in our category. But I'll let Amin talk about the interiors because they were well thought out and designed in a specific way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our facility is designed, first of all, to look very attractive, very appealing to any parent that's about to tour. They're walking into this and they're feeling, wow, this is a very warm, welcoming environment. You're greeted by our admin team as soon as you walk in. You have the owner's office that's next to the front, as well as the director's office, so the families can see, wow, there's another person to talk to if there's a concern or, if there's a need for an update or just to understand, a little bit more about the school. Okay. So it's a really warm environment, but it's also very designed for safety. So for example, all of our doors have finger guards, for example, right? It's a small detail, but the highest level of incidents in the school are pinch points, right? So yeah, believe it or not, right?
Yeah. Wouldn't think about that, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Outside, right? We have playgrounds for each of the different age groups. Okay. They're covered, the playgrounds with shade structures, right? Because a lot of schools, children could receive burns if they're outside in the summer heat, especially in Texas, which is kind of our core market, right? But there's padding too for the turf, which is designed for a 6-foot fall. The second highest number of incidents in childcare is fall zones from a playground, right? So again, we've eliminated 2 of those incidents. The schools also have a splash pad. They have an enrichment room for science and Spanish. They have a garden. So when you're walking around the school, really our facility is also a big differentiator for us. It's purpose built. It's designed for childcare. Families understand that when they walk in, and they understand that, wow, of the childcare options here, this is a very high-end type of childcare environment for my child. And in these areas where we have our schools, parents want to invest in a premium childcare provider, a high-quality childcare provider. And that's what our locations and our school facility conveys.
I think that's, what you described there. I mean, you guys have really thought it out. I mean, really high detail. And I think with any franchise business, that's what you're looking for in the franchise, because if I could open up a childcare center of my own. I don't need a franchise necessarily to do that. It's those little details, those things that you've done the research on that makes the difference of why you want, it's not just a proven business model, right? It's the tiny things like that, we know parents nowadays, you end up with a lawsuit because, the kid stumbles or something. But you've thought through those things. You've thought through the safety measures. And that's where, if you're not going the franchise, you're going to be an independent. You don't think of a lot of those things, even if you've worked in such a facility, you kind of take for granted that those things exist. You don't even think about it, that all the time and effort that was put in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a proven business model, and you've learned from the mistakes and also the successes of the franchisor. And just with us being operators, we're still in the business. We have our ear to the ground, and that's where innovation comes from our own challenges and our own opportunities.
What does the staffing look like? And I know this varies, because I've talked to some other education type franchises. Staffing can vary, like from the early, I just opened my doors, to later. So I like to combine this question where, because staffing goes kind of hand in hand with how many students, how many kids that you're going to have. So what are your typical expectations when the doors are open, and then once you're mature? Because there's, with any facility, there's going to be a max capacity that you can hit for students. So what do we look like at the beginning, and then where are we going to get, look like? What are we going to look like?
That's a great question. So staffing, like I think you've alluded with other child-related brands, can really depend on your enrollment, right? Mm-hmm. So what we try and do when the school is under construction, right? We've got 7 to 9 months of advertising getting that pre-enrollment up as high as possible, right? So some of our schools, when the building is under construction, those franchisees do an amazing job with the community marketing, Google marketing, all of those things. And if your school is open full, right? You've got a full staff, right? For other locations too, you have a core group, right? Of your lead teachers, your core management team members. And then as you're gaining enrollment, you'll know when their start dates are, and you can plan ahead of time for when you're hiring that next teacher. You're hiring the next admin staff member, right? And that will allow you to make sure you're not going over your skis, and that you're hiring strategically so that your labor cost stays in track with your enrollment and your revenue. So that definitely changes when in regards to the time of the year, right? For a summer camp, you're hiring a full-time summer camp staff, to when you're open and how you're ramping up throughout the year.
How many people does it usually, like I say at the max, how many people would you actually be hiring? And also, how hard is it to find, the people you need to staff the facility?
Mm-hmm. So when a school is full, right, when it's at a mature stage, it's anywhere from 30 to 35 full-time employees. Okay. That's your teachers, that's your admins, that's your directors, education director, right? So your management team and the teachers that are involved in it. And, I think like all industries, there have been hiring challenges throughout. But I will say, relative to other childcare providers, I think we've had advantages for hiring and retaining staff, right? One is just the turnkey training that we provide staff, all right? the biggest area of turnover for staff is if they're feeling burnt out. And burnout can come if they're inadequately trained and they're placed in a room where they are at a very high ratio between teachers to children. Okay. Mm-hmm. And our process is we have a certain amount of pre-service training, a certain amount of oversight by the management team member, and they are staffed and placed into classrooms where they do not have a very high ratio. Okay. So if you're looking at things on a relative term to other childcare providers out there, I think it's been quite favorable. But I think the market has also generally eased up a bit in the last 6-8 months as far as hiring too. So and with teachers, this is a calling for them. It's different than other industries out there where you have people that want to be an early childhood teacher by calling and by passion. So they're really driven by this industry and they want to work in it long term.
Dick, this question's for you because I imagine you're the numbers guy since your job is development. So what is it? What do the fees look like? We've talked about the building and stuff, and kind of the costs there, but you've got franchise fees, royalties, maybe a marketing fee. What are the numbers?
Sure. Great question. Again, our franchise fee is $110,500. And so we collect half of it when we sign the agreement, and then we collect the other half when we close on our land. And we do not charge any type of training fees, and we do not charge any type of real estate fees. So if you were going to look at some competitors within the industry, they include all three. Okay. We include full training for everyone on the staff. So we have owner training, we have center director training, education director training, and then we train all teachers, administrative assistants, teachers assistants, and even the cook that's in the facility. Our royalty fee is 7%, and our advertising marketing fee is 1.5%. So if you look at us compared to others within our category, I would say we're a great value from what we offer and what we deliver, to be quite honest with you.
How long does it, we go through the training and everything, how long does it typically take to get a franchise? Because the build out's going to take a minute, to get it up and running from the time they sign the paperwork.
Yeah, I typically tell people that from the day they sign their agreement, in fact, we just had a signed new agreement yesterday, to the day that they open is going to run somewhere between probably 18 and 24 months. It could be less, could be more, but for us, it's really about finding the right location and making sure that the location works not only from a demographic standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. And so we work really hard with our commercial real estate brokers in the market to identify sites that meet the criteria. But then we'll go ahead and put together a 3-year business pro forma model and make sure that the numbers work. And how do we get to break even? And once we get past break even and we can start looking at full enrollment, what do our numbers look like? And they're quite positive.
Okay, so we're going to talk numbers because you just you opened up the that can of worms. What kind of sales can a fully mature franchise expect to achieve? And I also how long does it typically take? I know locations are going to vary and stuff, but have you seen what the average is to get you just break even, where you're starting to get cash flow positive? How long does that typically take from the time you open your doors?
So revenue wise, and we're just going to go off the FDD just because we have to, obviously. But in our current FDD, where we had 11 franchise locations that were open 12 plus months, our revenues averaged about $2.2 million, with our EBITDA number somewhere at about $649,000. And our medium revenues were approximately $2.4 million a year, with our EBITDA at just under $700,000 at $699,000. And in terms of a break-even point, as you stated, it varies from site to site and location to location. We don't have anything within our item 19 FDD that talks about when we get to a break-even point. We do have internal numbers that we look at and say, based upon our enrollments and our economic status of the building and everything else goes to do with it, that, we like to get to break even somewhere around that 6 to 8 month part.
That's pretty good.
That's the goal. Yeah. It could be before, it could be after, but that typically is what we look for.
Yeah, most of the franchises I talk to, like 6 to 8 months, that's actually really good. That's like usually on the front end, the earliest most can get there. I've heard some that are like 2 years plus and things like that. So it's a really solid number. And honestly, the earnings are solid too. Geez, like everybody I talk to in education, it's definitely a profitable business.
It can be, and for what makes Ivy Kids really unique, I believe, in the industry is that we really want franchise owners that are passionate about this industry, and they're passionate about kids and they're passionate about education. And then, oh, by the way, we have a really good business model, and you can make money doing this, and you can build legacy money by buying land, building, and being able to pass that down to next generation.
Yeah, so you're really thinking long term too, which is great. Being a family-owned business, I think you definitely have that perspective that you're thinking, generational, and with education that is too. So you've got a really good business model. What do you guys look for? What's your ideal franchisee? What are you looking for in an owner?
Well, that's a great question. I would say, I'm going to go back to what I just spoke about, is that we really want to have someone who has passion for early childhood education, and that this is something that just stirs inside them. And so if they have that, and then they have the financial wherewithal to get into a qualifying status, we have a really good process that we take folks through to educate them on our system. And it concludes with a discovery day, which a lot of franchises do. One of the unique parts, I think, of Ivy Kids discovery days is that, that potential franchise candidate has the opportunity to meet the senior management team, and they get to interact with our director of marketing, our director of operations and training, our director of curriculum, obviously Amin. And then we collectively as a team will discuss those candidates and make a decision as to whether we want them into our system based upon the team. So it isn't just a decision that's made by Amin and I that, hey, these people are great, let's bring them on board. It's, no, this is who the team is going to interact with. Do you see any red flags? Do you see anything that may not make them a successful franchise partner? And that it's a really a wonderful part of our business, and that I really admire.
Yeah, well, I think you guys are doing a great job. They say early childhood education is becoming more and more important. Yeah. I say the education system itself, the quicker we get kids started, the better the opportunity is going to be, and the easier their later education is going to be. And having, companies like yours, and others, being able to provide that safe environment, that nurturing environment that helps them really learn is like so important. Yeah. So this has been great. I love having you both on. How would, if somebody wants to inquire about owning a franchise, how would they get a hold of you? ivykidsfranchise.com is our website. They can obviously just go to ivykids.com and look at and learn about the centers and things along those lines. My email is my first name, Dick, at ivykids.com. And Amin, you can go ahead and give your information if you so desire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my email address is Amin, AMYN, at ivykids.com.
Okay. Amin, Dick, this has been great having you both on. My name's Cash Miller. I'm the host of Emerging Brands Franchises on the Rise. We've been talking to Ivy Kids today. If you're thinking that you want to get into the educational space, this is a great franchise to look at. There is so much going on. Early childhood education is really important. So you're not just looking at a great business opportunity, you're doing a service for your community, really, if you're bringing such a franchise to your city. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.